Christmas Thieves definitely tried to be creative, but I feel like there's very little substance to this film and it just feels very gimmicky. And I'll talk more about this in a moment, but it feels like they didn't have a feature length film, so they decided to throw in the animation element to bulk it out. And honestly, it just feels pointless. This was released in 2021, it's directed by Francesco Cinquemani. I apologise if I've mispronounced that. And it's about two thieves who accidentally babysit two children because they decide to break into this house, or at least that's the plan. And there are two children there who are waiting for their babysitter to arrive. And I did wonder, well, what's going to happen when the babysitter does arrive? And honestly, they handled that part very well. So I'll say no more about that. And so the children don't phone the police and say two people have just broken in. They have to pretend to be the babysitters and keep up this pretense and try and get the children to go to sleep so the children can not be aware of them leaving the house. And honestly, as a concept, I thought it sounded quite interesting, but the execution is kind of boring. They basically spend a bulk of the film reading this book to these children, and we get to see this book playing out on screen in animation form. And to begin with, I thought, okay, that's quite cute, that's a fun idea, but it happens so frequently, and it just feels like they're trying to pad out the main narrative with this Arctic Friends story. There's nothing wrong with it, the animation quality is very good, but it just doesn't really do anything. It's just padding, and the main narrative could have been wrapped up in about half an hour. So honestly, it's not very well thought out. The pacing is not very good. It's very, very slow. But I will say the characters are interesting. Both the children and also the burglars. We have a cast including Tom Arnold, Michael Madsen, Lorenzo McGovern Zaini, and Mia McGovern Zaini. And the performances were really strong and the characters were really likeable, really interesting. Loved the costumes. The burglars are dressed as Santa and an elf, which I think definitely helped to keep the Christmas element alive. So the only thing that doesn't work is the animation element. The animation on its own, absolutely fine, but it just seems like padding. And it just was kind of annoying. The more we went into this animation, the more I got annoyed by it because it just seemed like the main narrative wasn't fleshed out enough, so they had to rely on this. And if it had been less frequent, maybe it would have been better. So I don't know. I feel like they tried hard, but it definitely is all style and very little substance. I won't say no substance, but it definitely could have been much better if they'd maybe just worked on the narrative a little bit more. Christmas Thieves, though, is otherwise an interesting idea, reasonably executed in places, but we have a nice amount of Christmas and some very well-written characters and great performances. So in general, it's not terrible, but it definitely isn't perfect.